Inside Hilltopper Athletics is brought to you by Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration. Here's your host, Lynn Ullum.
Welcome to Inside Hilltopper Athletics as we prepare to open up men and women's basketball here on the Hilltop. Opening weekend, conference challenges, a lot of action. We had talked on the football show that we actually have a home football game against rival Wheeling University Saturday afternoon. But before we even get into the weekend, we open up here Friday. So I'm joined by co-host Don Clegg. Don, thanks for joining us.
Oh, glad to be here as always.
And I'm assuming that you've got your voice ready now as you're the voice of the Hilltoppers. You're ready to go and calling 3 basketball games in a day?
Yeah, I've been practicing talking to myself a lot, so I'm all warmed up.
Well, that's what us retired people do. We probably talk to ourselves alive.
There you go.
Basketball here, near and dear to my heart, because that's what I did for 25 years as a coach. And even in the AD role, I've been on the broadcast for a number of years here. So personally, I'm really, really excited. But let's start with the men's program. Coach Ben Hallett. Don, what are we seeing? Who's coming here this weekend? What are we looking at?
Well, one thing, these crossover shootouts, the Atlantic region crossovers, last few years have really given us a nice insight into what to expect from the region. And a couple pretty interesting opponents coming in with Shippensburg and Seton Hill. Now, we play Shippensburg Friday, and only the 7th time we've run into these guys. And we're up 4-2 in the series if you count those things. But the last time we met, and there may be a little bit of a grudge holding over because, of course, part-time assistant coach Dan Monterosa was on this team. But back in the 2018 Atlantic Regional, Shippensburg hung a 98-66 loss on us, and that one still stings. And I don't even know if we want to ask Coach Hallett about that one.
Well, I think we've all talked. We were all at that game, and even Coach Hallett will tell you, and I think we agree, it was a miserable day, but that's so far in the past. And again, I'm old and barely remember it, so thank you for that information.
Yes, but bringing us back to the present, though, both squads are coming in here with a lot of new faces. Obviously, Coach Hallett went out, signed 4 transfers, brought in 3 freshmen. Chris Veit, head coach at Shippensburg, he brought in 3 freshmen and 2 transfers. Now, he's got 10 guys back, but only one of them started for him last year. So going to be kind of a discovery process for both teams, especially early on, the opening part of the season. Two guys to watch from Shippensburg, or 2 guys that that they have to replace, actually. Carlos Carter, who was the PAC West Offensive Player of the Year, and the Defensive Player of the Year was Dom Sleva. So it'll be a revelation for all of us when we see him out on the court.
Well, and I think that's the new reality that we're all dealing with here, is with the transfer portal and all the things that come along with that. We're seeing a greater turnover than we've ever seen in the history of the sport. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. Now, fortunately at West Liberty, we've been at the highest possible level for a number of years. Well, that doesn't make you immune to it, which we talked about last week. If you're middle of the pack, it doesn't make you immune to it. And if you're at the lower level, it doesn't make you immune to it. Yes. So everybody has to deal with that. We're going to see teams that are less experienced, at least continuity-wise, and playing with each other than we've ever seen. But it's still, you can complain about it all you want, but that doesn't stop the game from going on. So Coach Hallett knows that. Shippensburg knows that. Everybody that's playing up here in this opening weekend. And then just one more thing to add to that, Don. The whole purpose of these conference challenges, when the NCAA legislated that in, was a chance for regional teams to play each other.
Yes.
You have to be a regional opponent to play in these things.
Right.
You can't use that exemption and play somebody from California. So it's all built. So the ranking committee at the end of the year you have more of a test sample to look at because we've promoted inter-region play.
And you've been on those ranking committees. And just for our viewers that may not know what that means, explain that exemption.
Well, the exemption is you're allowed 26 regular season games. This gets you to 28. You have to do it in this first weekend, and it's got to be teams within your region. But then you get to play the extra two games. So most people, not all, but almost everyone attempts to find those opportunities so you can get those 2 extra games.
Yeah, and if you look at the MEC schedule online, you'll see just about every MEC team, the PSAC's the same way, just about every team is playing in one of these tournaments this weekend.
Dawn, let's quickly shift to the women's side here, as we're going to have Coach Hallett join us and then Coach Cooper. So we're going to have them both on today. Let's quickly get into the women. Also open up Friday. So tell us a little bit about their opponent.
Okay, pretty excited to see the women with their opener against Mercyhurst, because we think back to last year when these two teams got together, and it was a track meet from the opening tip. 108 to 107. We pulled it out, double overtime. Both teams have a pretty good nucleus returning. Should be really exciting, fast-paced women's basketball.
Now, one thing about the women's side, it has less turnover than what we've seen on the men's side. There's still transfer portals there, and there is player movement. Maybe not quite at the level that we've seen in men's basketball, but everybody does graduate kids, so fortunately, Kyle Cooper doesn't have to deal with that much this year.
No, you're right. He's got, I think, 4 starters back, 8 kids who were in his rotation last year. Really a very experienced veteran crew that, you know, we talked about the turnover and all on the men's side, like you were saying. These girls, Kyle's girls, have played together for quite some time.
Yes, and hopefully experience means something because he's going to benefit from that. They're a little banged up, and I don't want to go into that too much right now with the injury factor. But Coach Cooper, with fifth-year seniors taking advantage of the COVID year as well, so they're even more experienced than even when I was coaching, you would talk about experienced teams.
Exactly. You know, that's and looking again at Mercyhurst, which has some of the similar characteristics. They went on from that game, that double overtime loss to us, went 15-14 last year, which is the first winning season they'd had in 6 or 7 years. Included in that, they knocked off a Division I team in Buffalo out of the MAC. Coming back for them, a couple of Division I drop-downs. Danielle Grimm, who had 26 against us last year, is back with them, and Lexi Wagner. So this is a team that has some weapons.
Have some weapons, and as you mentioned, that was quite an exciting game. I was there in person last year. Fortunately, we'll be calling it from the track this year. But basketball season is upon us. I'm incredibly excited. Dawn's excited. The coaches are excited. Let's hope we have successful debuts by both of our teams. That wraps up the first segment here. We'll be back with head men's basketball coach Ben Hallett.
Disasters happen. Pick the team that takes care of them all. Powered by offices in Wheeling, Morgantown, and Pittsburgh, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration is ready to handle any size emergency at a moment's notice. We have the right people, knowledge, and equipment to respond 24 hours a day.
I'm Ben Hallett. When disaster strikes your home or business, tell your insurance provider you prefer the restoration company the Hilltoppers call, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration.
Inside Hilltopper Athletics is brought to you by Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration. Here's your host, Lynn Ullum.
Welcome back to Inside Hilltopper Athletics. We are now joined by head men's basketball coach Ben Hallett. Coach, it's always glad to have you.
Thank you for having me on here again.
And I'm warning you, I don't want you and Dawn to start talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates and all that stuff or fishing. We're focused on basketball here today.
We'll save that for another time.
Yeah, save that for another time. Well, Coach, It's another year. I think we can safely call you a veteran coach now. 7th year at the helm. I think you've won a few games, so we can say you're a successful veteran coach. But how does it work with you mentally? Are you excited? Do you have nervous stomach? Or how do you go into these first games?
Sick to my stomach. I'm a nervous wreck from starting the Sunday before our Friday game, so kind of in panic mode just because I don't think we're ready to play right now, and I think that feeling goes along with a lot of other coaches at this point of the year. So I've seen us play in 3 scrimmages, and I know there's a lot of stuff that we need to work on to get better at before we play an actual game. But whether we're ready or not, we're going to play on Friday.
Yeah. What do you think you've learned about your team from those 3 scrimmages?
Yeah, I think, a lot of these new guys are, I think, starting to understand our system more and more as we continue to play. And I'd rather scrimmage than practice, and I'm a big practice guy, so I'd rather play in actual games. And we've had an inter-squad and 3 scrimmages against other teams, but I think our guys are still learning each other. I think the more they play with each other, both offensively and defensively, the better they're going to get.
One of the things about the team last year, and you said that you told us that was one of your most enjoyable seasons as a coach, and not just from wins, but just from being around the guys and the way they came together towards the end of the season. What was the key to having them gel like they did, and how do you bring that about with this unit?
Yeah, I think that actually starts in recruiting and making sure they check all the boxes, not only on the court but off the court as well. And let's just be honest, winning helps. Winning helps cure a lot of problems. And we rattled off 18 straight wins, and we're sitting there in the national tournament, and life is pretty good when you win games. But just their attitudes with things, and the way they handle business and practicing in games, and hopefully the guys that were there from last year to this year can bring that type of an environment to this year's team. And that's kind of what we're relying on some of these veterans to do, and Christian Montague and Zach and Ben Sarson, like those guys are trying to do that with this year's team, but it takes time, as you know.
Yes. Here's a question, and try to be honest with this. I don't want to hear Coach speak or whatever, but Don and I, we've already talked about the transfer portal, and this is the new reality. You're going to have more turnover than I ever faced when I was coaching. It's just a different world, but you've dealt with turnover now, successfully dealt with it over, it's not just a 1-year thing, going back 4 or 5 years, actually even your first year. Is this year any different? Does making a national championship game and coaching a team at that level and then looking at this one now, does that skew your viewpoint?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny you said that. After our first scrimmage with Ashland, I try to compare this team currently to the end of the year last year's team, and I don't think you can do that. We were playing at a really high level, and that group played 30-plus games with each other, and this group was, after one scrimmage against another foreign team, it's like, you can't do that right now. But I do think this team has a high ceiling, and it's just, can we get there? And that's kind of my job, is to see if this team can get there. That's the fun part of coaching, is getting better every day in practice. And I think we're at the point right now, though, where we need to play in games to improve. I think we've practiced for a long time, and we're sick of each other. Like, we're sick of screening each other. We're sick of rebounding against each other. We're sick of guarding each other. We need to play against somebody different where it actually matters in the win-loss column.
Yeah, coming into the season, especially a season opening tournament like this, you have Shippensburg, Seton Hill, and in the transfer portal era, and we addressed in the opening sequence how much turnover there's been on both teams. How do you do a pregame scout?
It's hard, and that's kind of what we're working on right now. And here's kind of where we're at with things. It's uncomfortable because every team knows how we're going to play. They know how to scout us. Yes. They know we typically don't change for anybody. And I'm watching game film from the 2016-2017 season on Shippensburg when we played them. And they're a completely different team than they are this year. And so we're watching game film from last year, but this is a completely new team we're playing on Friday. And They might play a zone, they might press, they might play. I have no idea what they're going to do. So it just makes it really uncomfortable for us as coaches. But we're just trying to do the best we can and try to gather game film from their past schools to junior colleges to other Division II schools to high school and give our guys the best scout that we possibly can.
Do you think it's, for as challenging as that is, let's hope that it's even more challenging for other teams going through transition to face your defense?
Maybe, but they've got time to prepare for it. They know what we're going to do. They've got 15 years of game film to watch, so it's not like it's a secret what we're doing anymore. And I know Coach Fight is a really good basketball coach, and I know he got me pretty good in my first year, so I owe him a little bit of a redemption there. And to go back to that year, and I know you guys were both sitting courtside, we were getting punked out that game. It's kind of embarrassing, and I was embarrassed after the game, but we get another shot at these guys on Friday.
Well, we did talk about
Yes.
that in the pregame, and it wasn't a fun day, but hey, that's all part of that's college basketball. We have to have days like that, not that any of us want it, to make you appreciate the better days. So I know you're smart enough. We've already talked. It's no use asking you questions about your team because you're going to give us the most bland answers. So we're not going to get into who starts and who does this, but just take a brief moment and talk about our returners, and not individually, but do you think what they experienced last year, does it have any bearing on this year?
I hope so. Like the one thing I'll say is I know what I'm going to get from those guys every night. And, you know, from Christian to Zach to Ben Sarson to Chaz and everyone else that, you know, I'm not mentioning, I kind of know what I'm going to get from them. And I feel confident when the ball's in their hands and, you know, something good could possibly happen and hopefully nothing bad will happen when those guys got the ball. And again, my comfort level with them, both on the offensive side of the floor, the defensive side of the floor, is there with those guys.
Yep. And again, getting back to what you're talking about, preparation, melding the returners and the new guys into a cohesive unit. In your system, what comes faster, offense or defense?
As far as learning?
As far as the learning process?
I don't know. Nothing right now. I feel like it's taken forever on both of those ends of the floor. But I actually, and I'll give our guys credit, so I'm not so negative here. I think we're a little bit further along in our pressure defense right now than I anticipated. And I feel like our on-ball pressure is good, or our denials are good, our back guys are doing pretty good. It's offensively that I'm a little bit concerned right now. And you're thinking, well, you scored 100 points in this scrimmage and that scrimmage, but everything's difficult right now. There's not a lot of easy scoring, and that's something that we've been trying to clean up for the past 2.5 weeks.
More thinking than reacting?
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, here, to get your blood pressure up a little bit, I just got back from University of North Alabama, and I watched our women's team play, and the amount of charges in the game was off the chart. So explain the new charge block rule.
I have no idea. I get told one thing one scrimmage and another thing in the next scrimmage. So I was just told that they're not going to call many charges this year, and we've had more charges called in scrimmages in years past. So if y'all figure it out, let me know, because I have no idea.
Well, I was talking to Missy and Adrian, the head coach, associate head coach at North Alabama, and they were just beside themselves because it was a charge every single time.
And I think that, like, we're making it really hard to officiate. Those guys got really tough jobs now. And I kind of, as crazy as it sounds, I feel sorry for officials because we're just making it way too difficult to officiate not only regular games, but our games. Our games are really hard to officiate, but I think our league does a really good job with officiating.
Well, at least the one rule that I hated the most is in effect, right?
What's that?
That was, refresh my memory here, on the flop. They took that out, correct?
No, they didn't.
They didn't
It's
take
still
it out?
there.
No,
Yeah,
it's
it's still
still
there, but who knows if they'll call it or not. Nobody knows.
Well, people that watch the broadcast know I do not criticize officials on the air. I'm as laid back when it gets to that. I understand how difficult it is. And last year when they were calling the flop, I wasn't criticizing the officials, but I did go on record and say this might be the dumbest rule I've ever seen enacted at the NCAA level. So
we still your soapbox is still up there by the table.
Yes,
so
but
we're ready to go.
But fortunately, it did kind of go away.
Yeah.
After that first 2 weeks, it kind of went away. So double fingers crossed for me that we don't have to face that. So we asked you this last week. To wrap this segment up, just kind of reiterate, it might be the same answer, a different answer. What's your biggest fear going into these opening games?
Just the new guys. We do have 7 new guys, and 3 to 4 of them are going to play significant minutes for us. And they have never put a West Liberty uniform on in a real game and play. And I think a lot of times there's a misconception of if you put a West Liberty uniform on, you're automatically going to win the game. And it just doesn't work like that. You got to go out and play hard. So I'm curious to watch those new guys play, and I'm hoping they're amped up, ready to go. And it's a different feeling. And we talk about this as coaches, like it's a different feeling come game night. Like scrimmages are great, and practices are great, and everything, but game night there's that extra mojo flowing, and I hope our guys have that on Friday.
Well, one of the things that I can probably guarantee, so we're encouraging all of our viewers, or as many as possible, come out. Watching it live is way better than watching it on a stream. Please come out and support our teams. But one thing that I can almost guarantee you, the effort level is going to be there. You don't win at the level that we've won at. It's a culture here, and I know that word's overused, but fortunately that's something you can bank on a little bit. We don't know if anybody's going to make a shot or whatever, but are you pretty confident that the effort level will be there?
Better be. It better be. If it's not, we're going to lose, and those guys aren't going to play. It's pretty simple. If the effort level's not there, we're not going to play those guys. But that's one thing our system, I think, does is it makes guys play hard. And you stick out like a sore thumb if you're not putting forth the effort, especially defensively. So, but I would anticipate, yes, the effort level will be there.
Well, I would guess so too. Well, that wraps up this segment of Inside Hilltopper Athletics. We were joined by head coach Hallett. Coach Hallett, good luck this weekend. Don't do anything that we can criticize you on the air for.
All right. I'll try not
And
to.
then take care of business so you can go home and watch college football.
Sounds good to me. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll be back with head women's coach Kyle Cooper.
Disasters happen. Pick the team that takes care of them all. Powered by offices in Wheeling, Morgantown, and Pittsburgh, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration is ready to handle any size emergency at a moment's notice. We have the right people, knowledge, and equipment to respond 24 hours a day.
I'm Kyle Cooper. When disaster strikes your home or business, tell your insurance provider you prefer the restoration company the Hilltoppers call, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration.
Inside Hilltopper Athletics is brought to you by Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration. Here's your host, Lynn Ullum.
Welcome back to the final segment of Inside Hilltopper Athletics Basketball Edition. Now joined by head women's coach Kyle Cooper. So, Coach, hair looks good, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, took care of that yesterday. Got to be game day ready here in a couple days.
So, kind of some of the same things we're going to ask you that we talked about Coach Hallett. It's basketball season again, conference challenge, which we get to host.
Yep.
Where are we at with that rotation? This is
starting a new one. So we've partnered with Wheeling, Edinboro, and Mercyhurst, and what we're going to attempt to do to kind of benefit the resources of all institutions is it's going to be played in Wheeling one, then Erie one, then Wheeling, then Erie, and each team's just going to host their own games. So a little less taxing on departments, gets us an opportunity to get 2 home games each for every other year with each team, which is great.
Yep. Well, as a former administrator,
Yes.
it definitely helps. Dawn, start firing questions at him.
Okay, Kyle. You've had 3 scrimmages, is that correct?
Yeah, 3 under our belt now, yeah.
Okay. What have you learned from your team in those scrimmages?
Well, I think one of the things is I learned I got to continue to be fortunate to have, Coach Seth alongside with me, because she had to remind me after our first one we started a week to 10 days earlier than we usually do, because my mental state was not probably where it needed to be. So grateful for that, but it was also eye-opening for our team in that first one. And I think the thing that I'm most proud of is then we played 2 scrimmages in about a 5-day stretch after getting a week to 8-9 days to clean some things up from scrimmage 1, and we saw a jump. And I think that's important, is you get the realization of what it's like to get back to games. It's the realization of who we are and who we need to become. And we saw changes, and it puts us in a better position to feel comfortable going into opening weekend, but proud of who we are.
And going into this weekend, and obviously, every coach nervous before the opener. You don't know what you have, or you haven't really, games are different than scrimmages. And then you open against a Mercyhurst team that you had one of the most exciting games of the season against last year. You combined for 215 points, a couple overtime periods, a lot of swings back and forth and emotion and stuff. And you have a lot of girls back that were on the court for significant periods during that game. What does that mean going into this weekend?
I think it's not only that game in particular, but just a testament to who we are from an experience standpoint, that we understand and have been in those moments early in a year. And we've learned to grow from them, and we've seen, and we'll show them some clips from that game that, we're able to weather storms, because I think especially for opening weekend, there's so many different emotions and feelings going on.
Yes.
That you need consistent reminders to say, like, we've been there before, we've done this, no matter what they throw out at us, we can adjust and we can stay ready.
And one of the things that you've always emphasized since you've been here is that you're a developmental program, and you can really see that with some of the kids, especially the ones who've been here for several years. And what are some of the things that you and Coach Seth and your other coaches, what are some of the things that you do to help bring that about?
I think it starts with playing to our strengths so they can play to theirs. So there is a difference when you look at who I am and what I bring to the table from a standpoint of I've been approaching the world as a coach for a long time, dating all the way back to my early years of college till now. I was not fortunate enough to lease up. I know that probably shocks our viewers when you see an athletic specimen like me sitting here. But I'm able to look at the world one way, and then Coach Seth, Odd, some of our other coaches are able to look at the world a completely different way because they've walked this journey and they've been through this. So that it's not just an element of this is what we want to do and how we're going to go about it, but then tweaking things in a model that makes sense to say, well, this is actually how a student athlete's going through it, how a player's going through it, what they're processing. And then you combine that with the relationship we have with our players to know what their needs are, and you're able to stack a lot of varying concepts in a lot of different ways to try to get them where they need to be, both on and off the court. So there's a lot of layers to it, but we're really intentional to it. We take a lot of pride in it. But most importantly, it takes the buy-in of players wanting to get better, wanting to be in the gym, wanting extra film, wanting, to have that, to take advantage of those resources. And they do. And we're seeing the progress, I guess you could say, through it.
And the recruiting process, I would say, feeds into that as well, that you recruit the kids that you want to develop.
For sure. And I think that's one of the hardest things for people to understand is our recruiting approach is very different. We're a short list program, but we take a lot of pride in knowing about a lot of players. It's not collecting talent, though. Mm-hmm. It's bringing players in that can fit who we are, and then taking those players and developing them over time to become who we envision them being. And again, there's a lot of layers to that, but it's a process that's fun and it's really rewarding when you see it work out.
Well, speaking of players, and by design, we don't talk a lot about individuals on this show. We always keep it team-based, but I do want to bring up, you return a player this year that was noticeably absent last year.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit, Bailey Smith, what she went through last year, where she's at as we approach this year.
I mean, quite a journey. And you talk about everybody's journey is very different, but when you look at Bailey in particular, even before getting here, when you're always the it player, when you always have the ability to show up and play with that edge and control a lot, and then you add the fact that she has the charisma she has and is so well liked and loved by all those around her, seeing adversity can be hard. So she grew up a lot her freshman year, but then going through with what she went through last year, she really learned what it meant to overcome adversity and to grow. And we couldn't be more thrilled to get her back on the basketball court, but also see her go through that journey and now be rewarded for being back. I think it was eye-opening for her. I think, though, what we have to remember is for Bailey, she hasn't played in a true game for a while now, and she probably needs to let herself off the hook in that and settle in. But leaning into her teammates will take care of so much more of it, and I think that then we'll see that talent come out.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned, because she is a charismatic kid. I enjoy talking to her every time I see her in this building, and for a kid to get hurt and spend a whole season rehabbing and having to sit there and watch your teammates play, and you throw on top of that she is kind of a basketball junkie type kid. She lives to play basketball, so wishing her the best coming back. But you are right, she can't recapture 30 games lost in one day or 2 days. That she's got to ease back into this, meaning mentally,
yes,
not so much physically.
Yeah, and I think that there's layers to anybody going through that, not just for them, but for a team. So now, as a team, we've learned to weather some adversity. Other players have evolved in who they are as they've trusted the process of developing with us. And in turn, when we put it all back together, are there going to be growing pains? Absolutely, to get it all back into the chemistry and the flow of it. But if they'll lean into one another and trust one another, I think we can do something special.
We asked Coach Hallett this, and I may have asked you the same question last week. We did with him, but now you've gotten through your schedule or scrimmages. You're opening up here this weekend. What's your biggest fear right now? What's the one thing that you could wave a magic wand and say, oh, I'd like to make that better?
Wow, that's a heavy question. I would say that it's just, as a coach and as a leader, is there something that we're missing as a staff that we could have them better prepared in? We have no idea what it's going to be like. We can sit there and watch all the film in the world on the other teams. We know right now we're focusing most heavily on ourselves in preparation. But you watch old film and you go through things and you try to get your checklists ready, but at the same time, there's going to be something that happens in those games. And then the hope becomes, have we at least built a team and going back to our approach, a family that can weather anything that does come, because something will happen. But that's always my fear is what could I have done better? What could we have done as a staff better to have them better prepared for opening weekend?
Yeah, and building off of that, do you feel, your preseason's almost over, season's pretty much here. Do you feel that you accomplished in the preseason what you set out to accomplish?
Yeah, I do feel good about where we're at. I think you naturally feel good when you look at some of the makeup of the roster and the experience and so on. That checks a lot of boxes naturally. But I do think we've made some serious strides, and it's amazing how much maybe you don't feel that way early on once you start getting them in October there for more than a few hours at a time, and you start to dive into it. You have those moments of like, we are just not there yet. But then you see them grow up going against other people in scrimmages, and it reminds you that like sometimes you have to trust the process with them a little bit more. And in doing that, we're seeing a product right now that we do feel good about. But that said, you still have to go out and you have to show up, you have to show out, and you have to perform. And that's the emphasis we're going to do in this 2-day preparation to get ready for Mercyhurst and then Edinboro immediately following the next day.
Yeah. How much can you actually know about Mercyhurst and Edinboro coming into this? Like you said, you've been focused pretty much on perfecting what we do.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. It's getting yourself ready so that at least the foundation of who you are on both sides of the basketball not only complements one another, which we've talked about an evolution of that in our program here transitioning to this season, but I think it's also setting yourself up to know that you've attacked things in a lot of different ways. Because if you can settle into good habits, you should be able to weather any system coming at you. So that's what we keep at the core of everything. But on the flip side, we are scout heavy as a staff. While we show them limited film and give them a limited scouting report, we will have an idea of who the other teams are. And when you look at the makeup of both those teams and those coaching staffs, I think there's definitely a foundation and a precedent for who they're going to be. Sure, they'll throw wrinkles at us. Who knows? They could throw something out we're not expecting. And we hope we're ready. But the basis, I think, of what we're expecting, we'll be prepared for.
Here's a question I've got for you. It's a phenomenon that I experienced as a coach, and I'm curious how you feel about this. Back when I was a young coach, I wanted to play on September 1st, not November 10th or whatever. I could not wait to get to the games, And you fast forward 20, 25 years later, I wanted to start like March 1st because I never felt we were ready to play. You're kind of a veteran now. We talked to Ben about that. You're up into that, probably 180 games coached or more. Where do you fall on that scale?
I think we all kind of want one more practice sometimes, and you feel that way probably like 4 minutes into the game, whether it's good or bad. But it's one of those things that I would say that I am, for the first time, I think, and maybe it's an evolution of a person and a coach, but I'm really excited to go play somebody else. So September 1st would have been lofty, I would say, that I was ready to. But it's sitting here that knowing that on November 10th, Friday, we get to go against somebody else with the lights on and start to see who we are, I'm pretty fired up about that. And I think that gives you all the feels and everything you could ever want as a leader.
Well, we're pretty fired up as well. So, Dawn, make sure I don't get this wrong. 4 o'clock on Friday.
Yep.
Versus Mercyhurst.
Correct.
And then
6
o'clock Saturday versus Edinburgh.
Yep.
Here in the cozy confines of the
Yes.
ASRC. I'm sure I'm speaking for Dawn and everywhere else. Wish you all the luck in the world. We'll be up there calling the game. We're excited to watch it. And as we said in the last segment, if you get a chance, please come live. It's always better
Please.
live. Come out, catch the game. If not, catch the stream. But hopefully when we get together again and do this podcast a week later, we're talking about a lot of positive things.
For sure.
That wraps up this week Inside Hilltopper Athletics, joined by my host Don Clegg and Coach Kyle Cooper.